evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga for the Nintendo Switch. My brothers and I used to be huge fans of the original LEGO Star Wars games. We played them on PC, so we kind of cheated a little bit in our usual Nintendo-only antics. But we did have a multiplayer setup, which was pretty rare back then, and so we were able to play both of the original games in two-player mode, and I think we even 100%ed the first LEGO Star Wars game. Then again, we had much simpler tastes back then, so I bet if I were to revisit it, I wouldn't like it as much. And generally speaking, that was my attitude toward a lot of the LEGO games that came out after LEGO Star Wars. Was they were all good games, but they started to blend together after a while. There was only so much you can do with the LEGO formula of building objects, beating up everyone in sight, not being able to die. And while Skywalker Saga is somewhat like that, it also makes a lot of decisions to really make this stand out as its very own game. This isn't a remaster of LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga for the Wii. This is a from the ground up reimagined experience of all 9 Star Wars films in LEGO form, not remaking the previous games in the slightest, just a complete and total, let's do this guys, from the ground up. Now, if you haven't played a LEGO game before, some of the mechanics may seem pretty familiar. You'll switch between various characters as they appeared in the movies, depending on which ability is needed to solve a puzzle. For example, droids can hack into computers to allow the other characters passage through. Jedi can use the Force to manipulate objects, and they can also use their lightsabers for additional range in combat, as well as eventually learning Jedi mind tricks to trick the enemies, which often lead to some very interesting puzzles. And then there's the very rare class of scoundrels, which still have the regular blaster controls of the other hero characters, but they have the additional ability to, it's really hard to explain, but they can basically zoom in on a target, and then they'll look at the structure of the room and say, aha, that's where I have to shoot. And then there's regular blaster characters, which have 2 options of combat. They can get up close and personal like the Jedi do, but they can also shoot from a distance in an over-the-shoulder perspective. So I guess you could say the game becomes a third-person shooter of sorts. And from what I've seen of other shooters, it generally does a pretty good job of mimicking that style, albeit without the constant needing to reload your gun as you would have to do in a Call of Duty game. Unlike those games, however, you're not forced to stay in the over-the-shoulder perspective. So if you want to, you can hide behind a bunker and do missions in stealth mode, or you could run up to the enemies and beat them up with your fists without even drawing the blaster, or you can try to do headshots, and it's just really great that the game offers you so much freedom. In fact, after you beat a level in story mode, you have the option to go back to it in free play, where you can play as any character that you've unlocked. Now, most of the characters you unlock over the course of your adventure automatically, because you find them in the movies, so of course you're going to get them. Sometimes you'll have to unlock them. You unlock characters and abilities and ships by wandering around the hubs between levels. Rather than a central hub world that contained all the episodes like the original LEGO Star Wars games did, there are several big galaxies that you can explore between levels. And in these galaxies, you can talk to the various NPCs to learn rumors for how to unlock other side quests, or they can send you on a mission that'll help you with recovering more bricks that you can use to spend on the characters and upgrades. And overall, I found this system to have mixed results. On one hand, it feels really cool that the galaxy feels like a coherent place, that no matter what is happening in the story, the game will say, this is where it takes place in space, we are going to this planet. And it feels like a real living place, especially with how characters will walk around in the towns, and you can talk to quite a lot of the characters to hear their thoughts, and sometimes talking isn't even necessary, but you can do it anyway. However, where I took issue is how much they slowed down the pace of the game. It wasn't until way too late that I learned that you could do quest tracking, similar to how you could do it in Xenoblade Chronicles. But then I started to realize that not only were some of the quests relatively vague, like, talk to this person with this outfit to deliver him a message. That just felt like the kind of annoying fetch quests that I was used to in Zelda. There is also the problem that there's a lot of loading screens in this game. If you're going to play through the story alone, you can totally do that without doing any of the side quests, and there's still a lot of loading screens. Sometimes even between cutscenes there are. And I just did not want to put up with that while fast traveling between the galaxies. On the plus side, the game is usually very generous about telling you how to get straight to the point of your next mission if you don't want to mess around with all that fluff, as there's usually markers that'll appear that'll say this is even where your next steps should be in order to get to the main objective. And you'll see a blue circle on the ground that says continue the story or start the new level. Generally speaking, I like how the game blends together levels and hub worlds pretty seamlessly. Like, most of the time, it's really hard to even tell that you're in a level. But what I like about this game in particular is that it's not as heavy on puzzles, and it's more intent on interesting combat and really recapturing the magic of the movie. In the original Lego Star Wars games, I was really disappointed that certain scenes in the movies were resorted to just a simple cutscene, but now they're actually playable. For instance, the fish chase scene in Phantom Menace is now a full level. You can explore the Gungan city, which you also couldn't do in the original Lego Star Wars games. Another really big addition to this game is voice acting. Every single character, even the NPCs for the side quests, are fully voiced, and sometimes even if they're speaking a different language, the voice actor will deliver their lines in that language with English subtitles. And this might be a little bit disappointing to fans of the older LEGO games, as those games used pantomiming to try to convey the meaning of the scene, but now everyone is fully voiced, and these are mixed results. I found that generally speaking, the actors tried better to imitate how the actors in the movies sounded as opposed to trying to actually perfect the script. So if a line delivery was awkward in a film, then it would probably be awkward here. But if an actor did a magnificent job in the movies, then of course the actors here are going to be fantastic as well. I think my particular favorite is Han Solo, even though they didn't get Harrison Ford, which was a shame as they got him in LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens, but this new guy still does an amazing job of picking up Harrison's style. I also like how C-3PO is, of course, voiced by Anthony Daniels, because who else can play him at this point? And Billy D. Williams returns as Lando. And most of the other characters, even if they're not voiced by the film actors, they at least had their actors from other Star Wars projects. So for example, the Clone Wars TV shows or the spin-off series or other LEGO Star Wars movies that you would see on Netflix. So I really liked that little attention to detail. Generally speaking, LEGO games struggled a lot in the combat, so I'm glad to see that it's been overhauled significantly. When you're a Jedi, it's still more or less the same, but there are also specific boss fights where you can put your Jedi reflexes to the test. For example, fighting Darth Maul will mean that you enter this sort of over-the-shoulder view where you can press the jump button to dodge instead of just leaping in the air. And to mimic the Jedi reflexes, you'll see red lines on the ground when your opponent is about to attack, so you'll have the opportunity to jump out of the way and do a counter-strike. Sometimes, if the lightsabers connect with each other, then you'll have to rapidly press a button in order to propel away your opponent. These were absolutely amazing. They started to get a little bit repetitious as you went through all of the episodes, but I didn't personally care, as I was just having too much fun to really be nitpicky. And I also liked how, just like how the movies had the two opponents very rarely standing still and fighting in place, how they would be constantly jumping around and moving from location to location. Skywalker Saga did a pretty good job of trying to do the same thing, where after you did a threshold of damage, then the opponent would run away, cause some traps to appear. Then you'd have to find a way to get back into the fight. And generally speaking, if there was something in the movies that needed to happen, it happened, and I really appreciated that subtle little touch. But that's not to say that blaster characters don't have their fun as well. Blaster characters have the option of either running up to opponents and just beating them with their fists, or attacking from a distance in a third-person shooter kind of mode. I am terrible at shooters, so I was generally terrible at shooting in this mode, but I was really glad that I had the option to just run in fists blazing and not have to worry about being precise. And there's options in the accessibility menu to do homing shots and like various things to make it easier to hit an opponent, especially if you can't figure out the aiming sensitivity. There are also sections where you'll get to fly on ships, and these are also really fun, as there would be arrows pointing your way toward where the targets were in 3D space. And it generally felt very exhilarating, especially when you would go upside down and see like the sun below you, and they just made for some really cool moments. Even corridor movement felt really natural. Overall, I think that LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga was a fun game, but that comes with a very huge caveat. Even though the game looks and sounds gorgeous, borrowing from the soundtrack of the movies with some really nice looking environments, you'd think being a LEGO game it would look kind of blocky, but they do a good job of mixing realistic scenery with some LEGO-y things to sort of create a stylistic look. But all of this great performance and huge hub worlds comes at the cost of lots of loading screens. But even worse than that is sometimes the game just won't register what it needs to do next. On 4 occasions, 2 on one mission alone, I actually had to turn off the game and boot it back on again for the game to be like, no duh, we gotta do something. At one point, it even stopped in the middle of a lightsaber duel, and my character just awkwardly stood there, and so did my opponent. And I was like, come on, fight each other, will ya? So I'm definitely really glad that Telltale Games added a feature where you can turn on a feedback tab where you can send some of your play data to Telltale Games online so that they can say, oh, this is how we'll fix it, or how we'll improve games in the future. While I'm glad that that option is there, that also makes me hesitant to recommend this to you guys, as I really want you to get the best experience, and maybe you will. It seemed to be depending on what the game felt like, as usually after I reset the game I was totally fine. But I shouldn't have to reboot a game just to get past a problem. So I'm hoping that the Q&A team can take notice of the feedback and possibly watch this review of mine and say, oh yeah, okay, well, we'll try to do a little bit harder on debugging and all of that. If you're a huge fan of the Star Wars movies and want to see how your favorite scenes are recreated, I think you'll really love the LEGO style humor here, as the full voice acting really allows these games to have more of a serious vibe, but at the same time the game rarely takes itself too seriously. Sometimes it goes a little bit too much on the silly side, where there's just so much slapstick humor going on when you're trying to pay attention to the dialogue. But there are also plenty of dark moments in the films that are turned into slightly more comedic moments. So I really appreciate that the game does a decent job of balancing. Overall, the characters felt fun to move around, and there were some quality of life improvements over the original LEGO Star Wars games. Because one of the biggest things that people had problems with in the old game was the lack of camera control and how depth perception was often a bit finicky. So in this game, when you're trying to make difficult platforming jumps, there will be an icon letting you know that you can safely make the jump, and then your character will auto jump. It could also just be because they have Jedi reflexes, and Jedis like have magnetic feet, so that could also be part of it. And the droids also have more actions to be able to do. In the original games, all they did was hack into computers. That's still mostly what they do, but now they can also actually attack back, and they can also, some of them can grapple, which really opens up possibilities for puzzle solving. Not to mention that, to my knowledge, every level in the game can be played in multiplayer. I had no one to test this with, but considering my experience with the old LEGO Star Wars games, I would be very happy if this game allowed split-screen multiplayer rather than forcing the characters to be too close together, as they did in the original, and whoever just walked farther would get more mileage. So I say Approach this game with skepticism as it currently is, as if the game hasn't been adequately patched, then you might just want to play as much of it as you feel comfortable with before jumping into the full package. However, if you do manage to get a smooth gameplay experience, then this game has a lot of content. There are tons of side quests and characters and ships to unlock. There's DLC that lets you unlock even more characters. And if you're a purist for the original games, there's even free Mumble Mode DLC where the characters will pantomime and grunt. I didn't try that out because I actually like voice acting, but it's nice for people like my brothers who wish that LEGO games never had voice acting to begin with. You'll be able to explore space sections and be able to travel between planets. Once you beat a level in story mode, you can return to it as any character to access new secrets. And there overall is just a lot of stuff to do. So if you end up paying $60, I think if they patch out all of the glitches, then this is a very high quality, lots of things to do product. Sometimes the missions can be a little bit repetitive, and sometimes you can only smash objects and collect studs so much before you get bored. But I think if you're a stickler for the Star Wars movies, this is probably the most accurate simulation you can get to an authentic one-to-one film-to-video game experience. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if I missed anything down in the comments, and until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!